What's up guys, Dark Deli here, playing Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and today I want to take an in-depth look into weapon modification in the game and how it works. The first thing to know is that weapon modification works differently in Breakpoint than it did in Wildlands, and that's in much more than just the parts, but rather also, like actual modification. So first off, before we talk about the augments you can apply to a weapon class, let's have a look at the parts and what you can do. Luckily, transforming an M4 in the game is much easier than real life and no tools are required. There are a few options we had in Wildlands that we don't have here, most noticeably the options for different barrels and buttstocks. Those are now gone. But that's really not a big deal because, well, they've streamlined things a bit for the better, I do believe. I will tell you, as a weapons tester, there really wasn't any reason not to run the full buttstock in Wildlands. Now, as far as the barrel choice, I tested and found no difference in damage, rather only really in bullet drop. Well, there was the change in recoil control, but however, the parts here in Breakpoint now not only tell you what they do, but they also add another layer of strategy to rifle setup, with each one adding some, stats while dropping some other stats. So we have strategy now. It's very interesting. Now, admittedly, realism does take a small backseat here, but this is a video game and thus requires a small bit of suspension of disbelief. Always keep that in mind. Real life, is not that fun. Now, all of that said, we're looking at most of the same physical attachments we could use in Wildlands, and again, yeah, no tools required like in real life. Good stuff. So in general, they also follow the same rules. Vertical grips will probably be better for ASRs or, assault rifles. And angled grips are generally going to be better for SMGs, things like that, but we can get into that in future videos, and we will. As far as I can tell, optics are really still all about preference, and I like that because I know the sight picture I like and can use quickly, and you probably know what I mean. When adding or subtracting parts, make sure to take note of what stats you do or do not want. Okay, so now to the modifications. Now, I find these very interesting. And sure, here we have fantasy, but again, it's a game. Yeah. The modification system consists of several elements. These are things to do with dismantling weapons, using the parts here to craft individual mods, and the mark level of the weapon, be it Mark 1, 2, or 3, and the passive bonuses that come with that. Okay, so let's dig into all of that. Alright, so first is the system which allows us to deal with all the loot that we may find ourselves acquiring during the course of the game. Clothing and weapons can be broken down into their constituent components, giving us metal parts, weapon parts of varying degrees, and more specific parts. For instance, dismantling a DMR will give you DMR parts, and so on. The weapon parts of various grades, so far as I've seen in the beta, come in 4 tiers. We have regular weapon parts, which come from breaking down regular quality weapons, improved weapons parts, which come from dismantling green quality weapons, advanced weapon parts, which come from taking down blue quality weapons, and then high-end parts, which come from dismantling what I assume to be yellow, possibly. It's a class of weapon that I have not yet encountered in the beta. Okay, so all of this goes into filling up these 8 modification slots, and here's how these work. Each one you fulfill by combining the demanded parts and will add a unique, small, passive bonus to the weapon. Once you've done all 8, another tier of slots will appear, requiring higher quality parts and leveling up the weapon, for instance from Mark 1 to Mark 2, etc. Doing so also unlocks these handy little passive bonuses you see over here, which can be much more beneficial. Some of this does attune with the weapon qualities I mentioned earlier, being gray, green, then blue, and then again, I'll assume yellow or something. Gray weapons are regular. Green ones have one randomized passive bonus, such as you see here. Blue weapons will have 2 passives, as you see here on my M4, and so on, with high-end weapons, which again I have not yet encountered in the beta. Now, I was hoping to bring this to you in a way that makes sense, but the weapon modification system here on Breakpoint is multi-tiered and intricate, allowing you to customize your loadout, honestly, like never before. You may even want to have different weapons saved for different scenarios, and you do, as it happens by default, have your presets saved for each of the current 4 player classes, so that when you swap your role at a bivouac, you also update your loadout to what you have there. Now, that's again something we'll address later, guys. Alright, so it's an incredibly personalized system. And there is one thing I forgot to touch on. The 8 modifications I mentioned, the little grid of 8 boxies there, they apply to each weapon in the 3 different tiers, and they do carry across to similar weapons. For instance, if I modify an M4 and used all those weapon parts and everything to build it up and everything, there's no worry of finding a new and better M4 with better passives, because all of this stuff will carry over. So when you modify, say, your AUG or your A2 or your 416 or whatever, all those parts are going to carry over. If you pick up a new 416, you'll have those same 8 boxes filled, and it'll automatically be, Mark II, Mark III, whatever you modified it up to. Guys, there's a lot to cover here, and we will be covering this more in depth in upcoming videos, but these are the basics, and I think this really helps show so many of the awesome weapon customization features and the tools that we see here in Breakpoint. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Dark Dally, and we have a lot of fun here and a lot of things to test in the future. I'll see you guys there.